Okay, so I think we can get the session started. The session is being recorded, all the sessions for the program have been recorded. So we've made them available as we go. So we'll send the summary to everyone who registered today. So welcome to our first session of Level Up. Sorry, our final, a final session of Level Up Work and Wellness Program, and we're taking you through the highlights of the program, flashbacks to our last 5 sessions, and we'll give you the resources to stay passionately on your path of growth. So Lorna and myself are your hosts today.
Yeah, so we can kick off some introductions, perhaps, as for those of you mentioned it's your first session. So firstly, to introduce you to ITAG, who help us bring this program together and bring it to you all. ITAG are a non-profit tech association that develop technology innovation along the Atlantic Gateway here on the west coast of Ireland. And ITAG nourish the local tech cluster through networking events, tech talks, social events, and by hosting upskilling opportunities for leadership and future skills development. And then within ITAG themselves, there's various special interest forums, of which the Digital Women's Forum is one. And Taryn and I are both on ITAG's Digital Women's Forum Committee, and we're delighted to have been able to deliver this program for you over the last couple of months. So just an introduction then for myself. My name is Lorna Smith, and I'm a solutions engineer in Diligent. So they're recently new in Galway and have made Galway their EMEA HQ. So if you haven't heard of them yet, I'm sure you'll hear more in the future. And I've been working with the Digital Women's Forum for several years now. And I've also worked in a lot of local tech companies like SmartBear, DXC Technology, and HPE. So that's a little bit about me. Taryn, do you want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm Taryn Schiller. I've worked in the Digital Women's Forum Committee with Lorna for I think about the same amount of time, probably about 3 years or something, 4 years, I don't know. This whole lockdown thing has made me lose complete track of years. But yes, I'm currently working with Avaya in Galway. Started with them in September of this year. And before that, I was working in a few other companies around Galway and Limerick, like HPE, DXC, Planet, and Neat. And then prior to that, I worked in the UK and South Africa.
Great. So now that we've done the introductions, just a quick overview of our program. So this is the Level Up Work and Wellness program that we ran over the last 2 or 3 months. And the whole goal of the program was to bring a conscious approach to your own personal wellness and agility. So you'll see here on the slide the various topics we've covered. And as we mentioned, these will be available as well for you to view back through the recordings.
Yeah, and then today's, I'm just going to put that link in the chat for you guys. Give me 1 second.
Yes, so there's a link there that Taryn's going to post, which will direct you to the website where you can access each recording of each session. Thanks, Taryn.
No worries. So the agenda for today is we're going to have a recap on our previous 5 sessions. It's going to be an interactive session, so please do just come off, ask questions, come off mute, or throw things in the chat. We'll keep an eye out there. We will be recapping each session, just the things that stuck out for Lorna and myself as we went through the program, because we had some lovely guest speakers throughout the program as well. And then we'll do a little Q&A at the end of each session. So we've got the 5 sessions there. The first one, we zoomed in on you and your values. The second one, we identified what empowers us to grow. The third one, we looked at which goals rise to the top for us. And the fourth one, we learned about our vitality and how to grow and maintain our energy. And then the last one we had 2 weeks ago was where we studied the science of distractions and attention strategies. And then, yeah, at the end of that, we'll leave a bit of time for Q&A and then a program wrap up. So we're going to start with session 1, just the highlights, or as I like to call them, the flashbacks to how many weeks ago was that now? Yeah, quite a few weeks ago.
Many
Yeah,
weeks ago.
12 weeks could be. So yeah, so JJ Reardon was our first guest speaker, and he taught us on how to zoom in on you. And the session was all about understanding your current values, so that as we worked throughout the rest of the program, you'd have an idea of what was important to you, which would indicate where you want to learn or grow or stretch. And then we used then also as an indicator to realize when your focus is getting pulled in a different direction, come back to remembering the values that are important to you right now. And this should help you readdress your values and ditch the distractions. So in session one, sorry, give me a second, my slides are a bit slower here. So in session one, as I mentioned, we were identifying the core values. This is a snippet of the values that we looked at in the session with JJ. And we chose about 4 to 6 in that session. And then we visualized what a 10 rating would look like against each of those values. So that 10 represented if the value was completely fulfilled, how does that value look? And then we looked at what the value looks like right now, and we used the scale to rate them. So compared to what a 10 would look like, where it's fulfilled, where are you right now? Are you a 7 or 5 on reaching that fulfillment? And then we also chunked down that as well and looked at if we could take one of these values that hadn't fulfilled itself to a 10 yet, what would one increase in point look like? So we kind of looked at what a little action would be to go up on that. So I highly recommend listening back to that session. If you haven't done this, it's a great session. And it was a perfect session to kick off the program. And just a reminder on these values is they're looking at what's important to you right now. You know, as our lives change, our values change. So always remember that and always take that time to reflect on what's important in the current time.
Great, yeah. And then following along from that, JJ also explained how not only can we spend time identifying, our personal values, but it's also really good tactic to do this professionally. So there's an example here whereby you as an individual working, for yourself or a company should sit down and kind of identify what's important to you or what your needs and values are professionally. And you can see some examples here. For example, is it career progression? Is it travel? Is it salary? So really sitting down and identifying what your values are and where you feel you're meeting those values today. So for example, here travel is quite low. That may be because of the pandemic or because your role doesn't allow for travel. So it's good then to kind of say, okay, where do I want to increase? And then how can I make that increase? So, what actions can I take? So you can do that for yourself. And then if your manager is open to it, you could also ask your manager to do the same. So what's important for them? What are their values? How can you help them meet their objectives? So I think it's a really interesting exercise to do. And it just makes sure, that you and your manager are aligned and you're both aware of each other's values. And it's just a really clear and easy way to communicate, I feel. And as well to be able to track progress, because, you can do this one day and then 6 months later or a month, however often you want to check in, you can see how you're progressing and whether or not you're meeting these values any better over time.
So yeah, that was just a small snippet of what that session looked like. So I see a few of you joined us for the first time today. Anyone on here, were you in that first session? Did anything really jump out for you in that session or from the highlights we showed now?
Yeah, feel free to post it in the chat there if there was something that resonated with you about that session, or even just looking at it now for the first time, if this isn't something you've ever really thought about or maybe spent time, documenting it.
Yeah, Lorna and myself had quite a good reflection on this first session afterwards, where we realized that, as we were creating this program, we were actually fulfilling so many of our own personal values by rolling out this program. I'm seeing a few people in the chat here remembering that a values change. Yep, that is a really good point. That stuck out for me a lot in that session. And yeah, spending time rating values was great. Good. Yeah, so some of the values I realized just by rolling out this program. This program Lorna and I do in our spare time. So it was taking up a lot of time to engage with the speakers, to create the program, to host and facilitate all that kind of stuff. But it didn't feel like effort at all. And we realized because we were fulfilling our values, that's why it didn't feel like hard work. It just flowed. And luckily we get along great as well. So I think that helped. But Lorna, do you remember your values that you'd rated in session 1 that stuck out?
Yeah, for sure. So I remember fun and laughter was one of my values. And anytime Taryn and I would meet to work on this program or meet our speakers, obviously we got down to business, but it was always a bit of fun, a bit of crack, and very light-hearted. So really enjoyed that. Community is another value of mine. So having the opportunity to meet everyone on the call every 2 weeks, having that chance to chat, because unfortunately with COVID, we haven't had any real time or real person meetings. So I really enjoyed that. It really met my value of having a community to speak with and to work with and to learn from. So they were just 2. There were some others as well, but just in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think a big one for me was meaningful work that stuck out, because being able to learn and grow with Lorna on this program, and then also share those learnings of what we've not only learned in this program, but from my own previous experience, and hopefully have that help somebody else along the way. That for me was a big one.
Great, yeah, and just some more feedback there in the chat. So Maureen there was mentioning that she learned that you need to keep updating your values and realize what you have to focus on. So again, it's a moving target. What might be a value or a priority for you this month may be very different in a couple of months' time or even a couple of weeks. And also there we have Natalia. She's been actually working on this with some apps. So yeah, great. Thanks for the feedback on that.
Brilliant.
All right, and so I'm going to introduce you then just to session 2, a quick overview. So we had JJ O'Riordan also host the second session, and that was all about how you can be empowered to grow. So personally for me, this is a topic that I really didn't know much about and learned a lot from the session. So it was all about understanding your story. So when I talk about story, it's the story that you tell yourself. So what's happening to you in your life. And then he spoke about how you can take steps to become empowered. And then he spoke about, along with Taryn and I, the various growth sources you can use to help you become empowered. So in this session, we kicked off with the understanding your story. And I'd love to go into detail on this, but just in the interest of time, I can't. But essentially, he was explaining that we all tell ourselves different stories, and he put them into 2 main categories. So we had the victim story here on the left-hand side, where you're very much imprisoned and you're in a constant cycle of being a victim, versus the empowered story, where there's much more freedom and you're telling yourself a much more positive and actionable story. And for more information on this in the recording, JJ actually shared some really great examples of what a victim story might sound like or look like. So it's really, really helpful. And it's just something that I really had no idea about until we did this session. So really interesting for me. He then, helped us understand, right, we now recognize that we have been telling us the victim story. So how can we step out of that? And he just gave us some very clear steps to follow here. So the first one being see it. So firstly, be courageous enough to see your part in the current situation, and not just the story you're telling yourself, but your actual part in what's happening. Then number 2, being courageous enough to own your contribution to the current situation. So, what did you do to contribute to this current situation? We then spoke about solving it. So what else can I do to rise above my current circumstances to achieve the results I want? And again, this could be things that are happening in your personal life or in your work life. And then do it. So do whatever it takes then to actually take the actions to rise above your current circumstances. And now, again, he says, whatever it takes, whether that's ethically, morally, and legally, of course. But again, this is just high level. If you do want more information on this, the recording dives into this a lot deeper.
Yeah, that was a great session. Lorna and I finished off that session just talking about our own experience with growth sources. Like Lorna and I, we relate a lot because we do have a growth mindset. We are all about our own empowerment as well. So we have a lot of experience in our past of trying to learn how to grow and expand my experience. So we had looked at, what had stuck out for us. So networking and mentoring were big ones for both of us. Then also peer programs as well, where you can like go to meetups or even sessions like this. And then also outside of work, sometimes, your family members or friends have got similar experience. It might not be the exact same story, but there is a resonance to how they overcame something or how they grew in some way. So we've got them all listed there. So I highly recommend, if you're struggling to get out of your victim story, use these other people, soundboard off them, watch their recordings or anything they post out there, read their blogs, and get that inspiration from them.
Yeah, and of course, this isn't an exhaustive list. This was just some of the items that kind of jumped to Taryn and I. You may have other sources of growth as well, but it's just good to know that, it's not just education is a way to grow. There's so many other places where we grow in our lives. So just it's great to actually see it on paper and get some ideas as well if you're not using any of these sources currently.
Yeah, and ITAG have so many programs that help with professional and personal growth. So some of the ones that we have is, we have a student coaching program. We have our coaching for success program, which started this year for the first time. Lorna and myself were both coaches on that program, which was great. I'm hoping to hopefully be a coachee in the next one and get a senior leader to be my coach. So we'll see how that goes. And on that note, we are looking for senior coaches. So if anyone wants to enroll for the next program in 2022, please do reach out to ITAG. We've also got the Digital Women's Executive Leadership Program, which has been running for a few years now. And I was very privileged to be in the very first course. Lorna, were you on that one too?
No, I actually
No.
haven't done that course yet. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember a group of us that was hosted in DXC. So that was a great course, and it's still running, I think, once or twice a year even. So look out for that one on their website. So I highly recommend you go visit their website, www.itag.ie, and you can drop down on that talent, the talent menu bar that you can see up there, and you can see a list of these programs I've mentioned, plus so many others there. And they most of them rerun over and over. So I'd also recommend you go look in at the forums there on ITAG's website. There's so many different forums. The last count I had, I think there were 15 of them up there. There's cyber forums, product management forums, emerging tech forums, agile forums, that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to post that in the link in the chat for you as well, so you can access that in your own time. I'll give you the forums one as well. And then, on the bottom of every page on ITAG's website, you can see that little join our newsletter form that comes up. So I highly recommend, if you're not on there, do go ahead and sign up, and then you'll see as the new courses roll out for the new year, and you can get in there early and sign up.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Taryn, for the resources there. Very, very helpful. And it's very easy to navigate there within the site. So if you are interested in something specific, you should be able to find it there. All right. Well, Taryn's just posting in the chat then. Just a little open floor for that session too. Was there anything anyone wanted to share that stuck out for them in that session, for those of you who were in that session live? And I guess for those of you who are just joining today, had you ever heard of the victim versus empowerment story? Is that something familiar to you? I personally hadn't. And what I really liked about JJ's presentation was he gave us examples. So he would say, like, there was a sentence, like, and he would say, have you ever said this? And he put up about, 8 to 10 sentences, and I was like nodding my head for all of them, being assured that yes, that's exactly what I've said. How did he know? So it's quite funny to kind of see yourself in the examples. You're like, oh wow, yeah, I wasn't aware, but I've definitely said things like that. And it showed that I do tell myself the victim story at times. So it's good to be aware that that's a thing.
I see Jackie's posted in the chat there about a therapeutic approach called narrative therapy, which works through stories like this. It's fascinating. Yeah, I've come across this stuff years ago. I remember the mind blown when the owning it, like with the victim stories, like that person did this to me and this is what happened. And somebody said, so what part did you play in that? And I'm like, nothing. I was the innocent bystander. And they're like, no. And you go and search and go, what part did I actually play? And then when that really starts to open up, that kind of the change in mindset.
Yeah, and Jo mentioned there as well, just becoming aware of the victim story. She thinks we're all a little bit guilty of it from time to time, and she also enjoyed the growth sources.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks for the feedback on that, folks. And again, if this session is sounding interesting to you, it will be available on the recording. All right, moving on.
Yeah, session 3 was hosted by Lorna and myself, and this one was called What Rises to the Top, and it was all about goal setting. We took you through the benefits of setting goals, the science of setting goals, celebrating your successes, and accountability and goal reviews.
Yeah, and when we started that session, we began just explaining the benefits. I think we're all aware of the benefits of goal setting, but again, it's good to see it on paper and just be reminded. So, having goals can help motivate you, and it will also hold you accountable. It makes you prioritize. It can also give you clarity on what's important to you and what is necessary for you to get done. It can give you a lot of personal satisfaction and fulfillment, and it can also provide direction and focus. So we just introduced that session with just explaining those benefits, and then Taryn went into the science behind the goal setting.
Yeah, and I introduced something. If anyone has seen NLP, neuro-linguistic program, before, you would have heard about the RAS, but a lot of people haven't. So I thought it was a good thing to bring in to understand how the RAS filters information into our into what we're taking in right now. So the RAS is basically based in your brainstem, and what's happening is we have billions of bits of information coming to us per second. It's perceived through our senses, and the brain realistically, it can't compute so much information, so it needs to filter out what's not necessary. And this is what the RAS does. So the RAS filters it into a few thousand bits of data rather than billions, and it does this by generalizing, distorting, and deleting information that we just don't need. So this is why it's so important to set goals, because when you set goals, your RAS now understands what is important to you, and this way, that when it starts to filter information out, it won't filter out what's important to you because it knows that you're looking for this. So in essence, we want to ensure that our RAS knows what's important for us right now. So basically what we want, what we value, and what we want to grow in, so that it filters the right information, people, courses, whatever, into our awareness. And this will then set the stage for the next steps of your goals.
And then moving on from the science of setting goals, we spoke about how celebrating your successes can also help you achieve those goals. So one example of this would be having a goal buddy. So that can be a friend of yours or a colleague of yours, whatever works best for you. Just somebody who can support you, give you encouragement, can help you brainstorm challenges, maybe even just someone for you to talk it out with. Sometimes when we say things out loud, we actually come up with the answer ourselves. And also to provide that additional accountability. I often find, when you tell somebody you're going to do something, once it's outside of your brain, and you're automatically far more accountable. You're like, okay, well, I've said I'll do it, so now I'll have to. So, being able to have a buddy to celebrate your successes with is a really good tool to stay accountable and to achieve those goals that you're setting.
Yeah, and it's so good to stop and do that every now and then. I often sometimes will think, I'll stop and look at where I am around me and think back to 5 years ago and go, I would never have thought I would be here doing this, this, and this. And that for me is just excitement and celebration then, So if you have someone else, you're talking that through, I'm not saying 5 years, it could be a month, things grow so quickly nowadays as well. So I find that highly important, that you stop and pat yourself on the back every now and then and have somebody else go, well done, you've done a great job, because we are all doing great jobs. We're all making our little bits of difference to our lives and the lives of those around us. So yeah, in the last part, we looked at accountability and goal review, and my agile nerdiness tried to show you of, the purpose of why we do a sprint in our Scrum teams, and the reason why the events are in those sprints. So sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and retro is basically, you start the sprint by planning. This is our goal. We check in on our goal all the way throughout the sprint. Are we still on track with this goal? Have we lost focus? That kind of thing. Is something blocking us? And at the end, we do this kind of review where we go, did we achieve our goals or not? And then we do a retro going, well, throughout the sprint, did we work? Yeah, was the way we're working good enough to actually, what can we improve in the next sprint to make the next round easier? So I took that into, okay, do the same with your goal setting, your personal goal setting. So set your goals, do your own personal check-ins, maybe you manage your goals with a task list, you chunk them down into smaller steps, whatever that looks like, check in on them regularly. Maybe set yourself a 2-week framework or a 1-week framework where you meet that buddy and go, oh, remember I told you I was going to do this? Well, this is what I've achieved so far, and then you can do your own personal retro going, well, did I actually work in an efficient way to get these goals, or could I have done something a bit better or easier, or ask somebody, do that retrospective to make sure that the next time you're reaching for the next steps of the goals, you reach it a bit easier.
Yeah, so that was really a recap of what we covered in the goal setting session. So again, we're just keeping it very high level today, but for anyone who joined that session, was there anything from that stood out for you? I know in that session, we also spoke about strategies, using different strategies for goal setting, like SMART goals, etc. So feel free to share in the chat there something that stood out, or for those of you who've just joined today for the first time, if there's anything you want to share that works for you when it comes to goal setting, just pop it in the chat. We all like to learn from each other here. I remember from this session, the thing that stood out to me was Taryn's piece on the science of goal setting. So I have read a little bit about manifestation, which is essentially, saying your goals out loud to the universe. But then when Taryn was explaining the science, I was like, oh, okay, so that's a little bit like manifestation, except there's actually a scientific, I guess, background around it. It's the RAS that's actually now highlighting things and bringing them into your life. So I thought that was a really interesting section.
Yeah.
And as well, oh, sorry, go ahead, Taryn.
Oh no, I remember the first time I heard about the RAS as well. I was just amazed, and I was like, oh, why would you not be doing this? Because I feel information overload so much all the time. So you need to filter out the unnecessary data.
Yeah. It is. The biggest challenge with this, I find, is making the time, whether it's every week or every month, to write down your goals. That's the challenge. So even myself, I know I need to be more accountable for that. But once they're down on paper, then I'm a person who loves ticking things off. So I will more than likely get them done if I write them down. It's just actually writing them down is the problem.
Yeah, I think Joe sent a message. I think that came to me directly, but yeah, the science of goal setting was very interesting. She agreed with that. And Sarah says goal setting helped me to stay focused, and writing down helps change my behaviors. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And the celebrating your successes as well. There's a lot of personal successes that we all celebrate all the time, like, a birthday party, an engagement. But often when it comes to our career, there's so many things that happen, which, you're like, oh, that's brilliant, but nobody else really understands, or maybe you're embarrassed telling people. So it would be nice to have, at least 1 or 2 people in your circle that you can say, hey, I moved up a bracket in my salary, or I'm going to be team lead, or, I worked with this person in the company. So those kind of successes are really important too, and often aren't recognized as outwardly as, some of the traditional personal ones like birthdays and such.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess then we'll move on to session 4. And we actually have, I think, Suzanne on the call today. So Suzanne, again, I hope we're representing your session accurately, but feel free to jump in at any point. And so Suzanne Clark is the founder of Prioritize Me Place. And her session was all about vitality and energy. And she introduced the session speaking of energy awareness. She then spoke of the different energy rooms that we have to work in. And then she actually created some pause exercises for us, and she shared those with us as well to do while you're at your desk. So we'll jump into these now in a little bit more detail. So we started with the energy awareness. So just really asking yourself, do you know your energy? And this is very like straightforward things like, when do you feel your best in the day? So, you know, some people are morning people, some people pick up in the afternoon after their lunch and a coffee, after a walk maybe, or some people are evening or night owls. So just being aware of when you feel you're at your best. The next question then is, what energizes you? So understanding what gives you energy. So for example, I know when I go for a walk at lunch or maybe before work, I'm much more energized. I feel much more awake. I'm ready to tackle the day. Some people take naps. A lot of my friends are massive nap takers, and they always have been, like, since school. And that works for them. I personally can't take a nap because I'd never get back up. It could be stretching or pausing. So we do have the exercises that we'll share with you. Or it could even just be having a conversation with a friend or a family member on the phone. You know, I often get a lot of energy if I'm chatting with or catching up with friends, hearing all their news. So that was the second question. And then the third one, what depletes you? So understand what kind of takes your energy away. Is it if you don't drink too much water? Is it if you have too many meetings back to back? A lot of us can probably resonate with that one. Or is it if you're just sitting down for too long and you haven't had a chance to move? So knowing your energy and being aware of that. And then, you know, a great tip Suzanne shared was to plan your creative and your most difficult work around those optimal energy times. So if you're aware that you're sharpest in the morning, then make sure you plan tasks that are difficult for then. And don't be, you know, tempted to jump into your emails and start like just doing your like non-effort work. You know, so just make sure you plan creative and difficult work for your best energy times.
Yeah, and I loved when Suzanne brought in the energy rooms for us. I know a lot of people would think of energy just being physical, like you know, I'm tired or I'm feeling energetic, you know, but there's so much more to it that depletes you. It's your spiritual energy, it's your emotional and mental energy as well. The first time I really spent a lot of time on this was when I did my yoga teacher training, and that's Suzanne did hers as well, so I know her from that as well. But there's actually 5 levels of energy in the yoga training. But the fact that, yeah, this brings it to your awareness, and you can figure out, you know, what taps me up physically or what depletes me physically, what taps me up emotionally or mentally, you know. So asking those questions around your different energy rooms, and knowing that if you're struggling with energy, what can you do? Like, I know my walk out in nature every morning is essential for me having a good day. When I don't get that in, I feel that I drag myself a little bit more. So, and that walk is physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual, it's all of the above, you know. So figure out what tops you up and slide those little practices into your day. So thanks for bringing that to us, Suzanne. And then, you know, Suzanne gave us these pause exercises, and she kindly recorded that for us for the session. So I'll paste them into the chat again. But they're great. She took us through a small one through in the session, but there was the longer one to try out there as well. So I'm just going to paste those in, and I highly recommend that you give them a try. All you have to do is put the video on and follow along. And I know in session number 5, which we'll cover next, you know, the minded ladies introduced a similar kind of pause exercise, pause and move kind of thing. It is so effective, especially now that we're chained to our laptops. That's what I feel like. I'm just in my house, chained to my laptop in meetings all the time. You need to fit in that 5 minutes at least somewhere and get a change of atmosphere and energy. So thanks for that, Suzanne. So I was wondering, has anyone if anyone was on that session, have you had a chance to try those pause videos? Or if not, do you have your own little practice that you do that gives you that little break throughout the day? Let us know. So I personally have done the 5-minute one a few times. Thanks, Suzanne. Just a great thing just to fit just between meetings, where I just feel like I need to get back into my breath and even increase my energy that way.
And I find that if you try and schedule them into your calendar as part of your week, you know, you could start with 1 a week, 2 a week, you know, at some time, whether it's mid-morning or mid-afternoon, that can help prompt you. You know, you get the reminder. You can make it a non-negotiable. Don't let people put time in your calendar then or something, and it can really help you just kind of be sharp and more attentive then during the day.
Yeah, Jackie mentions the dog walking breaks help out.
Yeah,
They're the best
absolutely.
excuse to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was essentially the session on vitality. So thanks again, Suzanne, for that. Really, really good resources as well for us to take with us into our lives post the session. I can see as well, Joe was mentioning fresh air break was a great pause as well. So everyone, has their different pauses that work for them.
Great. And then session number 5, which was 2 weeks ago, was with Jackie, who I see there. Hey, Jackie, and Breda. So they're the founders of MindEd, and they brought some amazing sciences and insights on attention management. So they covered things like distraction, attention, strategies, and flow. So there was a lot of information in that session that was a lot I hadn't heard of before. And once again, we have a short session today, so we're just bringing you highlights. That recording, I think we still need to get out there. So we will work on getting that out there. And I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and so, one of the areas Jackie and Breda touched on was the science. And again, I just picked some key points. They went into a lot more detail and it's incredibly interesting. So I would highly recommend watching that. But, they explained how we as humans are primitively wired to survive. And that, when we go into survival mode, our emotions are in charge. And you'll see there, they use this diagram to kind of explain, for example, that the alligator in this case is your emotions, and that's what's driving your reactions. And you as a person are only up top, going along with whatever your emotions are doing. Whereas when we're in a much more relaxed state and not, reacting to something, we're in control and our emotions are just, down the line. So they explained that, and also how our brains are scanning for distractions. So whether that's a threat distraction or a reward, I think it was 5 times a second. So, don't feel bad on yourselves if you are constantly looking for distractions or getting distracted. Again, it's all happening. It's a biological thing. It's our default. So just really good to understand that. And then I thought was interesting, Jackie and Breda said that our brain reacts to real threats and perceived threats in the same way. So even if you're thinking about it, or if it is, whether I think the example I use, if you're walking out in front of a car, or if it was an email that rubbed you up the wrong way, you're still going to have a similar reaction and you're still going to have cortisol being produced in your brain. And when you do have cortisol in the brain, your capacity to focus and pay attention diminishes, which reduces your logical thinking. So that's often why, when you're stressed, sometimes you can't think straight, or you keep making more mistakes, or you fall over, like anything can happen. So just really important to understand that there is science behind that. And then the final point they noted there on the science was the reward. So our brain also rewards us for spotting anything new, pleasurable, or interesting. So we actually have quite an attraction to distraction. And when we get that, pleasurable or interesting feeling, we have dopamine, and then there's the dopamine reward loop where, we get that dopamine hit and it's addictive. So then, once that wears off, we kind of want to get that hit again. And I know I do it myself. I might get a message or a notification. I pick up my phone. I'm like, oh, great. Yeah, my best friend texts me. And then I'll put it down. And then, by default, I might pick it up a few minutes later to see if I can get that good feeling again. So yeah, the dopamine reward loop was really interesting as well. So that was just some of the pieces of the science. Again, there's a lot more detail in their actual session. And then Jackie also spoke about the various types of attention. So there are different types of attention. We have the spotlight attention, which is more when you're completely focused on one thing. We had the sustained attention. So that the example she gave there was if you're watching a movie or you're reading a book or playing chess. So attention over a longer period of time. She then spoke about the divided attention. So if you're doing 2 things at once, maybe listening to music while running, or watching a video here while I'm talking, so watching and listening. And then the final one was alternating attention, which is what we would typically call multitasking. But multitasking is actually, you cannot do a lot of things at the same time. So usually it's just shifting our attention over and back very quickly. And what I learned in that session as well was that too much switching also causes your brain to produce cortisol. So you can become anxious or overwhelmed or exhausted if you're constantly switching tasks. And that was a real revelation for me, because sometimes, if I'm waiting for a page to load or waiting for something to load, I'll jump into something else and I'll jump back. And you know, I do kind of then get a bit wired, and I'm like, now I understand why. And you know, that can be good sometimes, but it can be bad if you do it too much. So I really enjoyed learning about that.
Yeah, and so when it came to the strategies, there were so many good strategies that were shared in the session. And throughout the session, Jackie and Brita do give a lot of book recommendations as well. So this one came from one of those books. So I highly recommend getting your hands on that recording and listening to them. But I loved how they walked us through the science of distraction and the science of attention. This graphic here resonated with this program that Lorna and I have created as a whole, because we've been reviewing on different levels of how to move from distraction. So what is actions that move us away from what we want to traction, so actions that move us towards what we really want. And so Minded shared some great strategies to combat these distractions. So they had digital distractions and then other distractions in our day-to-day lives. I'm not going to go into the difference between them, but the recording does take you through all of that. But they ran one. There were a few polls in the session, but I love this poll towards the end, where they ran one on the strategies for focus, and this was the results from the poll from the people on that session. And you can see the one at the bottom, the top three that came out from this that people were going to try. These strategies for focus, that allowing breaks for movement or urge surfing, and as I said, that aligns to the pause breaks that Suzanne in her session as well. And a lot of people were saying that they do that, or they need to make more time to do that. Muting notifications. So just on that point you were talking there, Lorna, where you stop for a second and get distracted by something else, mute those things if you do need to focus. I took that as a big one as well. And then identifying 3 things on your list. So that's usually done at the end of your day. Identify 3 things you want to work on the next day, and try and keep them in your focus throughout the day while everything else tries to distract you away from it. So yeah, I love that session. So many great insights on that. And they finished off the session with flow, which I love this image that you had up there, which was the the distracted living to attention management to flow. So, from identifying distractions, blocking our path, to understanding how our attention works, and then implementing strategies to act as our sat nav. And then finally, explaining for me, it's an ideal way of working flow, or I think it's called it being in the zone. I've used in the past as well, where you get into that zone where time doesn't matter. Your thoughts are you're just in this like tunnel of focus. It's amazing. So the next image shows that they gave some ways to find flow. These ways to go through them. So there was also stuff in that session where they spoke to so many positive chemical reactions that happen while you're in the state of flow. That's so good for you. So once again, all I can say is watch the session or join any of Minded's other sessions that they roll out there. So much great information. Thanks to both of them.
Okay, yeah, so again, just a moment here to maybe open up the floor. If anyone wants to share, have you tried any of those focus strategies that Minded shared? Or what strategies do you use today to stay focused? So let us know if you've tried any of the ones that Minded shared, or if you have ones that you use yourself. Again, this is a great forum for us to share and learn from each other, so let us know what works for you.
Jackie's saying she's impressed by how much we remembered. Jackie, we have the recording.
I can see Jo has posted there. So she's actually reading one of the book recommendations called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And the 3 things on your list is great to keep focused, she's finding. So yeah, let us know, Jo, when you've read that book. If you've any feedback we can learn from as well. And then Suzanne has mentioned here that setting a time limit on projects is one of her strategies to help stay focused. So yeah, time limit is a good one, whether it's a small time, 40 minutes, or whether it's like a week. Everyone will have different, it depends on the size of the projects, but really committing to an end date. I know myself, I work very well under pressure. So lastminute.com, I can really deliver the goods. Whereas if I have a lot of time to prepare for something, I can definitely spread it out and, make it take way longer.
Yeah, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I remember a strategy I used to do when I really had to sit down and focus on something for a few hours. But realistically, you can't sit for a few hours. So you set this timer for 25 minutes and you give it the focus, and then you distract, then you walk away for 5 minutes, stretch your legs, get a drink of water, and you just work in these 25 kind of minute sprints all the time. And you actually get so much done, and it keeps you energized throughout that.
I think that's Pomodoro app.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Pomodoro
Oh,
technique.
Jackie's
Yeah.
also posted there. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember having to stare at data for hours and hours, and you can just lose yourself in there completely.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jackie's also mentioned there that Greg has a new book called Effortless. So again, for the readers out there, if you want to learn more, it's really good to have resources like that.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Jackie. All right, so we're just looking at time here, and we don't plan on taking the full hour. So before we wrap up, and thank you all. We do have an ask. We have a survey that we're going to share with you in the chat, and we'll send it, of course, via email to those who weren't able to join live. But we have had an amazing time, putting the session together and picking the topics for it. But what's more important is that the sessions were valuable for you, and that, if there's any topics that you really enjoyed or that we completely missed and should have been in a program like this, we really want to give you this opportunity to give us the feedback. So we would really appreciate if you can just it's literally going to take you 60 seconds, a couple of quick questions on the program, your experience with it, your preferred time slots. So even if this is your first session, you can still fill out the feedback, because if we were to run a similar session like this again, we want to make sure we're hearing what's good for you and what works best for you. Okay, so I think that's in the chat there.
Yep.
Great.
I see a message there from Louise thanking us, great topics, and she'll refer to recordings. So that's great. Yeah, we'll send them all out in the final email. So just a really big thank you to the speakers who worked with us. We had so much fun working with them. So thanks for your time and your energy, for contributing into this program. So feel free to take a screenshot of this page, anyone, if you want. We will send out the contact details of our speakers in the final email as well. But you can get in touch with them personally if you'd like to find out more about what they're doing. And yeah, just a special thanks to JJ Arodan from the Mindful Leader, who was our speaker in session 1 and 2 of the program, teaching us about our values and how to become empowered. And then Suzanne Clark, who joined us for our session 4, teaching us about our vitality and energy management. And then to Jackie and Breda from Minded for our session 5, for teaching us about attention management. So thanks so much. All your teachings aligned 100% with what Lorna and I wanted to put across in this program. So we're very grateful.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to echo that. Thanks. It was an absolute pleasure working with you all. And for those of you who, again, were joining the sessions, the contact details are here. If you would be interested in having, Suzanne or Minded or JJ in your own companies, they're absolutely open to having discussion about that. So feel free to get in touch. Okay, and then finally, just a massive thank you to ITAG for, facilitating this program and allowing Taryn and I to bring this to our online community in a time where, there's a lot going on for people. And we just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone, and also to Jo Mullins, especially in the background. She's been helping us with all of the logistics and the technicalities and the meeting invites and the recordings. So Jo, thank you for all your help and support throughout that. And obviously then to Caroline Cawley, the CEO, and to Dee Timoney, who's also been supporting us. So big thank you to you all. If you did want to give us a shout out or anything on LinkedIn, you can see the ITAG details there. And then if you want to connect with Taryn and I, we're obviously available to chat, or if you have any questions for us on any of the sessions or anything like that, you can connect with us there on LinkedIn or Twitter. And then my final, well, 2 final thank yous. Thank you all for attending our program. It was very enjoyable, and we loved hearing your own insights and sharing your thoughts on each of the sessions. And then also just a huge thank you to Taryn. It didn't feel like work. We were in the flow, it aligned to our values, and it was just such an enjoyable experience pulling this together with Taryn. And like we said, it didn't feel like work. So Taryn, thanks so much for being an amazing co-host and co-presenter, and yeah, putting this program together.
Same to you, Lorna. Thanks so much.
All right, so I think that is it. As we mentioned, we have the recordings available on the website. And if you're interested in staying in touch and up to date, you can go to the iTag website and look at their newsletter, sign up with your email address and you'll get the newsletter.
Great. And that's it. That's a wrap.
And that's a wrap. Is this when we say cut?
Thanks again, everyone. I think we can end the session now. It's been great.
All right. Have a good week, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.